This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
Hello, Bad Movie lovers. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Bad Movies We Love as we continue our Epic Adventures series. As always, I am your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of the stupid stuff!
Stupid Stuff is my middle name, but if you're tuning in, that means you're having fun right along with me, and
if you're listening to this, you are the Resistance.
And you can help out the Resistance by filling out our new listener survey. It's only a couple of questions long, take you maybe 30 seconds to a minute unless you really want to think about some answers. You know, I just want to keep working to make this show the best possible show that it can be, and I want you to be able to contribute to that. But moving on to today's show, we've got a good one, a long one in store. We started on Eternia, we took the Cosmic Key back to the 1980s, we returned the Cosmic Key with the Masters of the Universe, and then jumped all the way forward to the dystopian future of Waterworld. And now we're dialing it all the way back to the era of swords, sorcery, and sandals. That's right, we're talking John Milius' 1982 Arnold Schwarzenegger star-making vehicle, Conan the Barbarian.
This is a perfect marriage of actor to role.
Arnold has a certain kind of gravity as a performer that just bends the will of the movie around him.
If Arnold is on the screen, you just want to watch him.
Wow, all that slave labor has Conan shredded.
You teach him the pleasures of women while giving the people a free sex show, by the way. She gives him the information, I think, mid-orgasm.
He goes to the witch's house and he's like, well, I'm going to have sex with the witch too, of course.
Conan is a gentleman.
I'm just going to run into this village, just pillage it because, I don't know, that's sort of like the phase of my life that I'm in.
You get a scene where he punches a camel.
He doesn't just punch it, he KOs the camel with the right hand.
Doom thinks he's so smart, but he's kind of an idiot.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women. That is good.
Sean, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, Nick, how are you? How's it going?
I'm good. I ended up watching a lot of movies yesterday, including Conan the Barbarian.
Yes,
and we're not talking the 2011 Jason Momoa Conan the Barbarian. We're talking the Arnold Schwarzenegger, John Milius, 1982 Conan.
That's right. I have a running joke with a coworker because I'll tell him I watched a movie and he'll be like, the original or the remake? And I'm like, the original. It's always the original. That's always the answer. I don't know why, not that I've never watched a remake. Apparently Scarface is a remake. But, I don't need to watch Jason Momoa when I have Arnold.
It's 1982. It's not 1922.
Yeah.
No shade to Jason Momoa. I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know whether or not it's any good. But it did not end up spawning the sequel or the franchise that I'm sure that they had planned on when they brought him back for that role. So I don't know. Maybe that'll be a homework project after we're done recording this. But yeah, we're here to talk about the 80s, as we tend to do a lot of on this show, because the 80s and 90s were a glorious time for just studios making what they want to make. This is another Dino De Laurentiis production. So he's He's shown his face on this show several times. Nix would be very happy to know that we're covering another De Laurentiis. There is, in fact, another giant snake in this movie, which is very much a De Laurentiis staple. And no giant gorilla, though. That's specific to King Kong, but the snake looks very similar. And, you know, this was initially something that I was planning on recording with somebody else who never followed through. And I'm not sure exactly how or when you stepped in and said, I want to volunteer to take over, to pick up the torch and carry it for Conan.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember exactly either, but there's a lot of connective tissue with this movie and previous movies in your podcast and your Bad Movies We Love podcast history. So I always wanted to watch Running Man.
Oh, yeah.
And you did an episode on it. And I was like, hey, man, this is a good time for me to finally watch Running Man. And I loved it. I thought, like, that is not a bad movie.
It's not. It's great.
And it's prescient. Like, flat out, like, that was my reaction to this movie, is that it was prescient. And, so I went down the 80s Arnold, hole. And I followed that up with Raw Deal.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Where,
so stupid.
Because, he plays, Arnold as, like, a mob guy. How much better can you get?
How the hell does he infiltrate the mob with that accent?
I don't know. And he doesn't ever get hit. He never gets hit by bullets, man. It's great. I love it. Remind me of, like, Max Payne or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Commando, which I had never seen. Commando was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, and not on purpose, I went in reverse time order. I end up with Conan the Barbarian. And I was like, man, I've never watched Conan the Barbarian. And I did 3 of these in 1 month. Like, I just went down the hole. I was like, how is this considered a bad movie? This is great. Like, it's not just great, like, in a bad, so bad it's good sense. It's not bad, in my opinion, at all. And so after these 4 movies, I've watched all the other Arnold movies, of course, like the big ones. Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies. Terminator and True Lies and Predator. My father was a huge Predator fan. I've seen the big ones, Kindergarten Cop, I've seen all of them. But for some reason, I just never watched these. And I'm watching these. I'm like, this is why Arnold is a star. Like,
oh, yeah.
From the very beginning, watching Conan the Barbarian, he's a star. He barely says anything through the first 40 minutes, but you're riveted. He has such charisma on display. And this is 1982, So, yeah, I don't know. I just was talking to you about it, probably connected to Running Man or something like that. And I was just telling you, and you were having some trouble with getting someone on. And of course, I wanted to help you out by stepping in because, I liked it that much. I felt like I liked it that much that I could step in and talk about it.
Well, I'm very fortunate, and we're all very lucky because we do get to talk about Conan. And, I'm not sure why the critics didn't like it, but we'll figure that out at the end of the show. But it's got some decent scores. It's almost the 7 on IMDb. Its Rotten Tomatoes critic score is 67, which is good. 74 audience score, Letterboxd 3.5. So it's typically right around the 7 range in terms of scores. But for whatever reason, the Metascore is a 43. And I don't look at this like it's a bad movie either, but that's generally how I, look at most of the movies we talk about on this show, because they are movies that we love that are disliked for one reason or another. But with this movie specifically, I think that it's a sword and sorcery movie, which there were a lot of during the 80s. And I just watched one with Nix and Movie Miss last night called Conquest. And if you were to line these 2 movies up next to each other, well, they are very similar. Like, the quality of Conan is better by leaps and bounds. Like, we get this first early raid on the village, right? Where Tulsa Doom and his troops come in and they just kill everybody. Completely unnecessary to chop Conan's mom's head off right in front of the kid. But that's sort of the catalyst for why Conan becomes a beast later. But the production value, like all the costuming to have to build that big ass set, the village for everybody to then ride in to have all these people on horseback to burn the village, and you're really burning stuff in this case. So you get the all of the sword and sorcery kind of nonsense that made the genre so popular. You get like wizards, thieves, giant snakes, magic, cultist, temples, like all the weird stuff that sort of adds up to this particular time in history with movie making. But you also get it done at a very, very high level, which a lot of the other ones don't do so well. And I think because of the popularity of the genre, it was a little maybe easier to try and get away with doing a low budget version of this. But John Milius is a good filmmaker. Like, Oliver Stone stepped in and wrote part of the screenplay at the very least. And yeah, Dino De Laurentiis was a huge producer during the 80s. So this is probably like the height of that genre. So I totally accept this as a good movie. And I have no problem saying that. But technically, somebody brought it to the table. I see the 43 Metascore, so I'm just going to allow it because then we get to talk about it.
Yeah, and so, so Dino De Laurentiis, he produced Maximum Overdrive, our previous movie together on your podcast. He produced, and I saw the name. I just rewatched it for the first time. Blue Velvet. Produced Blue Velvet. My feelings aside about it, it's considered a masterpiece by many people. He did do Raw Deal.
He did.
Evil Dead 2. Army of Darkness. The original Dune, which is in the zeitgeist right now. Bound, which is getting its Criterion. And Body of Evidence, which I just want to throw out there as, hey man, if there's someone that loves Body of Evidence, I think they might qualify for bad movies we love. So you got, and that's just like an overview of movies that I personally, am interested in or liked. Like, I mean, he's done a lot of movies that I've watched that I've enjoyed. And then, yeah, you've got Oliver Stone, who's co-writer, along with John Milius, who is, I didn't know this until last night, Oscar nominated for Apocalypse Now. And like, I looked up his credits, and I think it's worth, and the reason why I'm going through this is so people understand, like, the people, what you're saying, the people who worked on this movie are talented people.
Oh, yeah.
He apparently did unscripted script revisions, John Milius, of Dirty Harry, Jaws, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Hunt for October, Eraser, Saving Private Ryan. So you get someone who is this talented directing and co-writing this movie. Of course it's going to be heads. There's a ton of talent in this movie, so I'm not surprised that it looks and sounds and, it's a good movie. So, yeah.
Let's not forget Basil Polidoris as well, the composer who made the wonderful score for this movie, but also RoboCop. And I think he did also with Verhoeven, he did Starship Troopers. He also did the score for Hunt for Red October, White Fang. Looks like he came back for RoboCop 3, Free Willy. So you have a guy who is a very high-level composer who made like an iconic score in the RoboCop score, I think, is one of the best that's ever been put on film. But I hear something like what he did here in Conan, and like he really elevates the material as well, because like you said, there's not a ton of dialogue, at least from Conan himself. So there's a lot of sort of adventuring going on while there's not a lot of speaking going on. And we get to fill in the gaps with this wonderfully rich music. And it's something that I think was really important to like during sort of like the Western heyday of filmmaking, because it is this big, grand scope of like the Wild Wild West. And a lot of that is going to be sort of like B-roll where we're riding across the countryside and you need to either pick up the pace or you need to make people feel a certain type of emotion or you want to sort of heighten the intensity. And we get a lot of that going on here. But, you know, James Earl Jones steps into this movie as well. Like, this is the movie that launches Schwarzenegger into, I don't know, it's weird that I don't know if he ever really like went back to being in a capacity that's like this dramatic. I mean, maybe like the first Terminator, second Terminator is like as close as you get before he starts to transition to like the True Lies, Last Action Hero type of Arnold, where he's like Arnold the whole time, you know. But I think, as you mentioned about his charisma, it's undeniable. Like, this guy is a very special case in Hollywood history where I think a big part of the reason that he's so successful is because not just the fact that he's charismatic, but that it seems to come kind of like effortlessly to him. And I don't think it actually was effortless because, you know, he said that this film was very important to his career. He called it God's gift to his career because it gave him the opportunity to actually like act a little bit and to stretch his wings and show his capability as a real like powerful lead here. And then, you know, the first Terminator comes after this. And then we really get to see him playing like a villain, which is a great opportunity for him. But there's just something special about Arnold. And I don't know if people knew like at the time that they were watching him, if it was sort of his living of the American dream that made him kind of transcendent in that way. This guy that came to the US not really speaking much English, starred in a movie where all of his speaking lines are ADR out of the movie, you know, and he still goes on to get another opportunity just based on maybe his physique. But I'm willing to die on this hill, and it's that Arnold is actually a very good actor. He doesn't typically get a ton of range to experiment with, but he is actually a very solid actor. And I think T2 is a good example of that, because even though there are questions of like, well, why does this robot from the future have an Austrian accent? You know, if I can put that stuff aside, he plays like the mechanical part of it pretty well. And so, you know, I think we really get to see him shine in comedies because you get to see like his comedic sensibility. You get to see like how big his personality can be with like Kindergarten Cop, or whether he's playing like Mr. Freeze or Junior, which I know a lot of people hate and is maybe like the lowest on the totem pole. But it's a movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets pregnant. Like, you have to at least have a small amount of appreciation or respect for the fact that the biggest action star in Hollywood is like, no, I want to make a film where I get knocked up. Like, that's insanity from the guy that was the Terminator. But I think it says a lot about like what he really wanted to be able to do with his career.
Well, I think, you know, unfortunately, I have a couple of thoughts. One, comedy is never given the respect it deserves. I mean, you know, it's a very cold take that the Oscars does not care for comedy. You know, it just doesn't, and that's unfair. I mean, and I'll tell you, you know, to talk about like, you know, a good movie that I love. I mean, I can't help but think of Jim Carrey in The Truman Show. He
Yeah.
doesn't even get nominated. Doesn't even get nominated for an Oscar. You know, so, and that's highly disrespectful. Like, you know, but you know, yeah, Conan, I think you know, the thing that I realized watching Conan about Arnold, and this, I don't know how people are going to react to this. I don't think it's a hot take. So he barely says a word, and he exudes all this charisma and all this personality. You know, he was clearly born to be a star. And it's because he does so much with his face and so much with his body language. Like, I probably can't even talk about it as technically as someone who knows acting does. I actually thought to myself while watching this, maybe he could have been a great silent film actor.
Oh yeah.
Like, think about it. Like, he basically, to a degree, through a lot of this movie, is yes, there's the grand music, which I agree with. The music is fantastic. Like, it perfectly matches every scene, and it sounds great. And it's extremely well done. It adds so much to this movie. But I mean, I wonder how many lines he really has in this movie for a movie that's over 2 hours. But you watch Arnold, and you're just drawn to watching him. Like, and I just put this together in my head. Few stars have that kind of charisma. Like, it's something I think about with Marilyn Monroe. For me, like, Marilyn Monroe is the center of the screen, no matter what else is going on. She just, when you watch a Marilyn Monroe movie, you know why she was Marilyn Monroe. And I think the same goes for Arnold. When Arnold is on the screen, you just want to watch him. I don't think it's because he's huge, he's gigantic, et cetera. But how many like physically huge actors have had the kind of career he has? Not many. So there's something intangible that Arnold Schwarzenegger has. And I guess the other thing I want to say is I agree with you. Clearly, he is someone who is very driven and very, you couldn't become governor of the state of California if you aren't someone who is driven and who's willing to take risks. As far as like you talk about Junior, like he's someone that has taken risks and has played with his persona. And no, I don't. I'm doubling down on you saying he's a good actor and saying that he would be a great silent film actor, which you cannot say about every actor. I think that's a special talent.
Yeah, and there was a guy on Twitter recently that had said that like he what he did was he re-edited Tim Burton's first Batman as a silent film, and part of me is like, I want to reach out to this guy and be like, can you do this with Conan?
Yeah.
Because it is almost like a silent film performance in that he's not ever focused on having to use dialogue in order to communicate with us as the audience. And what you said about his physicality, like obviously like he's coming off of a career as a bodybuilder. So like his physique is good, but he had a quote that I'm going to butcher. So I'm just going to paraphrase it. He was talking about sort of how he looks at bodybuilding as art, basically, like where he'll look in the mirror and realize that, oh, I want to add some more definition to this area. So, okay, I need to work a little bit on that. And then he'll see something like in the neck or the shoulder line, okay, where I need to work on that. So similar to like a painter or a sculptor where they're like, okay, I'm working on crafting this thing. And rather than a chisel or a paintbrush, like he's using the weights in order to do that. But it was very well articulated. And it let me know that like this guy has a good understanding of artistry, right? And I think what being a professional bodybuilder and I think like 7-8 time Mr. Olympia, I think what that did for him is that it allowed him a very fluid way to get in front of the camera and understand how body language translates to people watching it. And because of that, he can pull off something like this. And like you said, like there's just like certain ways that he holds his body or the way that he measures his movement that go a long way on screen. And I think he picked that up probably from his life as a bodybuilder. But I think Ben had just recently watched The Running Man as well for the first time. Ben from Cinema Shit Show. What's up, buddy? he had recently watched it for the first time, and he had messaged me privately saying that, like, oh my God, this movie's so good. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And we were just like kind of talking about Arnold. And I ultimately said something along the lines of Arnold has a certain kind of like gravity as a performer that just bends the will of the movie around him. So whatever movie it is, whenever he's on the screen, he's just bending reality around him because he's just that powerful of a screen performance, and like very different than, a guy like Denzel Washington, who is a very like commanding presence in his own right. But it's great to see that like these two different kinds of styles can not just like coexist, but also have their own sort of individual branches of stardom and fame.
Yeah, and you make a good point about his bodybuilding career um, leading to his talents as an actor. He probably does, probably did, and probably does have a expert level understanding of body language and how to use your body, and you know the fact that he was that exacting about what he wanted to do as far as his bodybuilding. That speaks to how he's analytical. He works on himself like that. Again, all these attributes lead to someone who becomes Arnold Schwarzenegger. These are all personality traits that can lead someone to become someone like him. And yeah, I mean, like I know, even comparing him to like someone totally different, to Marilyn Monroe. But what I always say about Marilyn Monroe is that um like she she's the light of the screen. Like everything permeates out, like light permeates out of her, and you're just focused on her. And I think they had, that's what we're defining as star quality. And the same thing with Denzel. Denzel, he has something about him as well, where just through his own charisma and his talents, and um he has an intelligence that you can feel in every performance he gives, and a gravitas that Denzel has that few people have. So, and this is these are that we're still talking about to this day.
Like you mentioned, the dedication to his craft, like in order to do what he did in bodybuilding, I think the first Mr. Olympia he lost. I don't know if it was his first time in it, but he finished runner up. And then he, rededicated himself, came back, and then won 7. And he's, I think, taken that approach of sort of like meticulous craftsmanship to his career as an actor as well. And I mean, he definitely has a large scale work ethic. I have not had the chance to read his book yet, but it seems like it's really an interesting look at his life and career. And his show that was on Netflix, I hope it gets renewed because it's very peculiar, but Fubar is a lot of fun. And I think it sort of understands the entirety of his career in how it approaches telling this story, because it's not just like Arnold the action star. It's not just like Arnold the dad. It's not just Arnold the comedian. It's sort of like all those things in competition with one another. And it has a very interesting uh, palette of tones on the table, because it's like in the way that like True Lies was comedy but good action, right? And then like maybe in the way that he was a father figure in Maggie and had like an actual or Collateral, where he has this responsibility on him. He's not just like the lone wolf type of character he's been in a lot of other movies. So it really does have an interesting blend. And I wasn't sure that I was on board at first. And then the more I watched it, I was like, the tone that they're going for here is very interesting. And it's filling a gap that I don't think really any other show has adequately done. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. We've talked privately about my trepidation with starting TV shows, especially
yeah.
on Netflix, because they love to cancel TV shows. Sometimes I think they're in the business of canceling shows as opposed to producing shows. But I'm definitely interested, and your recommendation will definitely get me to watch it at some point. And I was interested to begin with. I mean, seeing Arnold in a different form, as a TV show, serialized TV show, definitely is interesting to me. So, I'll check it out at some point. So, thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like really an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, like anybody listening to this,
Yeah,
I could understand being a little hesitant with him in a TV show, but I think it's just a fantastic opportunity for him because it also it updates the style of comedy that he was working with, right? The last time I saw him do a comedy realistically was probably the True Lies era, Kindergarten
yeah,
Cop, like mid to early 90s range. So realistically about 30 years ago. And then he was in Killing Gunther, which was fun, but he's not the main character. But you do get to see him have like ridiculous fun in that movie. He's just not in it that much. And so in Fubar, you really get to see like a modern style of much raunchier sort of comedy that you don't automatically associate with Schwarzenegger. And seeing him go through those motions of sort of being the man out of time, like the aging special agent who is still active, but is basically there to mentor the next generation and him and those sort of two identities clashing. It really makes for an interesting watch. So yeah, check out Fubar. I don't work for Netflix, but it's a good show.
I, I feel like we've reached the point where the platform doesn't even matter anymore. It's just, are you interested in the thing that is, being promoted? So, like, but the other thing that I'll say about Arnold in this movie is his physicality is truly like if there was someone that was born to be Conan, who, when you think of what actor, what's your short list of anyone in history, I think he would be at the top because like when he's pushing that wheel around, which I don't know what that wheel is for, by the way. I'm not sure if that wheel that he had to push around in the beginning of this movie did a thing. I think the only
Me
thing
either.
it did. I'm glad you felt the same way. I really noticed that this time around. I was like, what is this producing? I don't think it's producing anything except making Conan super strong. Like,
Yeah.
it does like the transition of time, from him being a boy to him being Arnold. And the camera is low while it's doing this transition. So all we're seeing is his legs. And like when you get a look at his thighs, oh, like his thighs are gigantic. Like never mind. But I'm just saying, I mean, we're talking so much about his physicality, and like his actual physical body. I also think that this is a perfect marriage of actor to role. I mean, hey, maybe I'll throw on the Jason Momoa one. I mean, I know he's a big old guy as well, but like, I just think this Conan will always be Arnold to me, and vice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean credit obviously to John Milius and to cinematographer Duke Callahan because when you have a guy like Arnold and you already know what the script requires of him, you know that he's not going to be talking a lot in this movie. So how do you make this character dominant on screen? How do you really tell the audience that this is still the person that's worthy of awe and admiration and who strikes fear into the heart of his enemies and is going to basically become Conan the Destroyer at some point? How do you do that effectively without him having like big powerful scenes of dialogue? And you do that in the way that they did it here, which is you really focus intently on like the build up phase. And so that transition from his childhood to adulthood, where you actually reveal him as this like hulking figure. But I also had the same thought of like, wow, all that slave labor has Conan shredded And I was like, but they must be feeding him a lot of protein to look like that. But I still don't know what the fuck this thing he's pushing is. But
No.
I saw like a fireball in the background. I'm like, all right, so maybe he's like churning some weird gasoline wheel. I have no idea. But, you know, it worked to span the passage of time and to explain why he's yoked at the end of the experience. But again, it's like, wouldn't every slave that's pushing the wheel eventually just become a giant, huge, uncontrollable beast at some point?
Right. And like, all right, so let's dive into this. So this is an origin story.
It is, yeah.
The first hour is just origin story. And so we got Doom, right? Doom shows up, burns out this village and by the way, like the narrator says this. So you talk about, you know, you're right. Fantastic production values. And like, you know, these Doom and his men like riding into this village and killing everyone and burning it down. And I'm like, why are they doing this? And the narrator, I'm quoting now, says, "Who knows what they came for? Weapons of steel or murder? It was never known." I'm just letting you know that the narrator himself doesn't know why they did this. And then, you know, they, in front of Conan, kill his father, behead his mother while he's holding her hand, and then just lets him go. And no, like, you created this guy, which is referenced at the very end of the movie. Like, you know, Doom says, "I'm your father, you know, I'm your daddy." But like, why doesn't Doom realize like you're an idiot? Because like, you know, he then sends Conan and the other children up north or whatever, have them spin this wheel around, get Conan yoked. And then for some reason, you make him a gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
So you teach him how to fight, how to have bloodlust. Like,
Yeah.
it's said that like that's all he knew, is he knew that he killed people and people like that he killed people. Then they transition to have quote unquote war masters
Yep.
teach him the deepest secrets, quote unquote, the deepest secrets. Then you educate him with language and writing. So you're educating this guy with poetry and philosophy. And then on top of it, the creme de la creme of all of this, the cherry on top, you teach him the pleasures of women while giving the people a free sex show, by the way.
Right.
Like,
Lots of voyeurism.
Yeah, they're just there to watch the free sex show. So, like, this whole origin story to me is just hilarious in a way, because it's like, yeah, you created the guy, you made him be vengeful for no reason. Even the narrator says no reason. You led to your own death, like, in the end. And that's, I just think that's the full circle of this story. I think it's great that it comes full circle. Like, that speech at the end that Doom gives, like, he himself realizes that he created Conan. And I wonder if he had an end goal. I don't know if the end goal was, hey, you're going to join my two other guys as my right-hand guys, or I don't know if Doom thought that far, but I just thought it was hilarious. I know I just ripped through like 40 minutes of this movie.
No, it's okay.
But like, you understand my point. Like, I mean, Doom thinks he's so smart, but he's kind of an idiot.
Hubris is ultimately the downfall here. Like, the idea that,
Definitely.
yeah, I'm just going to run into this village, just pillage it because, I don't know, that's sort of like the phase of my life that I'm in. I'm pillaging
Oh, he
shit.
does say that. He does say that. He says that. He says, oh, that must have been when I was younger. Or whatever he says. Oh, that's such a good point. Oh, that was a phase.
Yeah, right. So yeah, he just okay. Well, yeah, what I do here couldn't possibly have any repercussions down the line. And then he's not like directly involved in the raising of Conan into a super killer, a super intelligent killer as well. He just like goes back to his cult and he leaves him to spin that wheel for all eternity or whatever. And so I guess like there's just not a lot of communication with his generals and like, well, maybe let's not train all the children of the families we murdered to be very efficient, highly motivated warriors. But we do want to keep them as slaves, so we need to make sure that they're fed well, yada yada. It's complicated, but um, I know we burned through a lot of like the plot stuff, but what would you say is the reason that somebody might say this is a bad movie? You and I obviously don't adhere to that narrative, but there are some people out there that do.
I basically think it's because I think fantasy movies in general aren't taken seriously.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to say. I think that until we get like, I mean, maybe that's how Lord of the Rings is so extraordinary, is that it was taken seriously, and obviously the production values are phenomenal, et cetera, et cetera. But I think especially back in '82, people have been brought up on like bad Hercules movies, and you know, um, I just don't think the genre in '82 would have been taken seriously enough. Does that make any sense? Like, you get this sword and sorcery epic where you get the cultists and the many topless women. You get this guy who just looks like he's Diesel, whose name you don't know, and he barely says a word, and everything is heightened. Maybe people felt like at times it's borderline camp.
Mm.
Um, you know, I'm avoiding saying it, but I'm going to finally say it. I mean, you get a scene where he punches a camel, and I'm going to bring up the camel on purpose because, like, it's technically good movies don't have stuff like that. Like,
Great movies do.
Exactly. So, like, so technically, good movies don't have the things this movie has, and it's kind of what I referred to back when talking about how comedies still to this day aren't taken seriously. Horror movies are still to this day not taken seriously. I think sci-fi movies and fantasy movies are taken more seriously in 2024, but I think we've had to go through a long history, perhaps started, to a degree by movies like Conan and Star Wars that have led to them being taken as seriously as they are now, and they're still not taken that seriously.
I think you're pretty accurate, and sort of my knee jerk reaction was going to be something similar of that. I feel just like the sword and sorcery genre was probably not looked very highly upon. So you go into this movie, and if you already have some preconceived notions before you get there, then this only sort of confirms your pre-existing bias more so than erases it. But if you go into this and you're pretty open-minded, then you'll have a good chance to enjoy this.
I mean, look, I was 3 or 4 when this came out, so I don't know what I wasn't alive to I wasn't old enough to test the waters, but I just imagine that a sword and sorcery epic starring an actor who you don't know who he is, and that's another factor that we need to. Technically, does this really have name actors back in 1982? Right now, not really.
Just James, pretty much.
Right. Oh, and Max von Sydow, I guess.
Yeah.
He briefly shows up. So I think it came too early, but it's probably incredibly influential of a movie too. One of the things that I thought, you were talking about the production values of the village and costumes. The costumes are fantastic in this movie. Like those helmets are incredible that Doom and his men are wearing. And you know what a lot of this movie reminded of this watch? is Skyrim.
Mm.
You know, I'm a video game player. I've poured 400 hours into Skyrim. So you got obelisks and, you know, all the architecture and the helmets. Those helmets, I swear, like there's people in Skyrim wearing those helmets. You know, the swords, you know, and one of the things I realized, so part of what this movie is it's a gathering of an RPG or D&D team.
Yeah.
You've got Conan the Barbarian, which is now Barbarian is a class. And, you know, your Skyrims or your Diablos or what have you. You've got the Archer, who, you know, is somewhat high.
Sometimes also an elf.
Right. You've got Valeria, who becomes a Valkyrie, but she's introduced as a thief.
Thief, yep.
And then he's not given a name, so I'm going to call him the actor's name because it's fantastic. You've got Mako, the wizard.
The wizard, yeah.
So slowly over the course of basically a lot of this movie is putting together an RPG party.
Yeah.
And I imagine that Conan and movies like Conan have influenced, you know, the past 40 years worth of films and TV shows and video games. I think, you know, people maybe just didn't realize what they were watching yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think like nerd culture was still a little bit suppressed. And so you're not really making this movie for like the Dungeons and Dragons audience at the time. But give it, you know, 40 years and then we see a movie like Dungeons and Dragons that came out, I think last year before, was good. A lot of fun. The whole assembling the team, there's wizards, sorcery, set design, all the things that you would expect sort of as a fan of that genre now coming to the big screen. So, you know, I think maybe 2011 was probably even too early for a studio to revisit this idea. You know, this is something that maybe should have been done 2020s. But yeah, you could even bring back Arnold as like King Conan and have him just like be old and he's the villain now or something like that. That'd be an interesting story. But did you prepare a haiku for the synopsis of this film? We've already talked about the movie a lot, but in a nutshell, for somebody who hasn't seen the movie.
I have some bad news. I totally forgot.
Oh, that's okay.
I forgot to do my homework. I forgot to do my homework.
Like I said, I would prepare one just in case. But when I recorded with Shauna for Scream, you know, I was like, okay, I threw something together in case she didn't end up doing it. And then like hers was so good in comparison to mine. Mine sucked. So I was like, all right, I got to do a little bit better. So I'm going to revisit it. Okay. Arnold wields a sword in the name of Crom, his lord, vengeance and reward. That's the whole movie, right?
That's true. That's actually really good. And it rhymes. Wow, that was really good.
Yeah, it's in a much improved from the first one that I threw out there.
I apologize. My first thought was gonna do something about the camel, but look, man, I wasn't the best student, so I'm not surprised I forgot to do my homework.
Cool. All right. Well, you ready to jump into this trailer? Because I think, you know, we were talking about who this is marketed for exactly.
Yeah, no, actually, now that you say it, like, yeah, I'd love to see this trailer.
Before we get to the trailer, it's time for a quick word from today's sponsor. This episode of Bad Movies We Love is brought to you by Rogers Premium Leather Emporium. Whether you're in the mood for a period-accurate adventure or just some good lighthearted LARPing, you're going to want to look your best. So head on down to Rogers Premium Leather Emporium. At Rogers, they've got jerkins, loincloths, sandals, boots, headbands, sheaths, whips, and anything else you may need for a quest of revenge, pillaging, sex, or ancient adventure. But the best part is, if they don't have exactly what you're looking for, Rogers has a small army of highly skilled and dedicated leathersmiths that can craft you whatever gear your imagination can fathom. So don't get caught out in the buff on those cold desert nights. Head down to Rogers Leather Emporium and get fitted today. And now, back to the show. I don't know why this trailer's 4 minutes long, but let's take a look.
Slave. Barbarian. Warrior. Thief. Conan.
I'm so excited to hold that sword.
Come, a man of great strength, conqueror, one who could crush the snakes of the earth.
Oh, you gotta love that transition scene where James Earl Jones becomes a snake.
Purveyors of their own deaths.
He's evil, a sorcerer who can summon demons.
Day of doom is here. What daring! What arrogance! I salute you.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have more Max von Sydow.
It would. The music is perfect, by the way.
It is, yeah.
Comes the most incredible adventurer.
I'll say, we talked about the production design and stuff, but they had to build all these sets.
Conan.
I love the fact that they had
The Barbarian.
so many extras as well.
From Universal Pictures.
Because that's become, I don't know what's going on. Is there a second trailer after that? I don't think we need to watch the whole second one. That was good enough.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah. Just watch 5 minutes of all of the theatrical trailers of Conan.
No,
But it tells you, hey, there's going to be swords, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be sex, there's going to be horses, you're going to get the whole temple scene, and like probably hundreds, if not maybe a couple thousand extras working on this at some point. Because, I think of all the movies now where we see large scale crowds, for the most part, it's all CGI, like wide shots, but you get this long processional of these like weird priests that are all marching up to Tulsa Doom's compound, for lack of a better word. And this, there's this long line, this caravan sort of winding down the valley. And like, that's all actually people.
Oh, I took note of that. That like, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of ropes that they had to make.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a lot of torches that they had to make when they're going up the mountain towards the temple or whatever. That's when I really took note of the music. Because it, like, the music during that scene, like, I mean this sincerely, like, I'm not, because I know when people say this, it's so jokingly, but it's like, it was like a Renaissance Fair march, like, yeah. But it's got the Renaissance Fair like instrumentation, and like, I know that sounds cheesy, but no, it's awesome. Like, if you haven't heard it before, it's good, but it's. And they bring that theme back later on too, like, and it's the whole last, like, whatever that is, 40 minutes. There's just so many extras, and it looks fantastic. Like, it looks great, like the line of the robes, and then at nighttime with all the torches, it looks beautiful. And that's all production values.
Yeah, and it's sort of like lost production values. And it was something that I commented on when watching Kong as well, is that they initially, I think, planned for like 3,000 to 5,000, and they ended up having like 10,000 extras show up to be at that final shot at like the foot of the tower, where Kong ends up meeting his end, because they wanted to show that, like, hey, this is large scale. This is like New York City. There's a lot of people here. And, it's just something that I think it's so easy now to be like, yeah, we'll just do it in post. And like, we're not going to spend the time and the effort and the money to actually like feed a bunch of extras and have them there. But every time like I see it in an older film, I'm reminded how effective it is on screen, because like the organization of like that mass of people, or if you ever go to a sporting event and you just like the claustrophobia of being in the middle of like a huge crowd like that, I think it's important on screen. And I'm glad that this movie did it. They certainly didn't cheap out when it came to the production elements, and that's Ron Cobb who is the production designer for this. I think he did Running Man also and Last Starfighter. So you got a guy who sort of understands Arnold for sure. And
Yeah.
really built a world where we could experience it as it's meant to be experienced, because we get the bar scene, right? Where you're just at the pub and he's like just handing out money and drinking and having a good time. And you even see like, oh, it's the life of excess. They steal, they have all these riches, and they kind of become lazy and get captured. And that's how they end up getting on the mission to actually go see Tulsa Doom. And it really, really kind of feels like a Dungeons and Dragons type adventure where it's like, hey, you're on a mission to, this isn't the main quest, right? This is a side quest where if you like rob this place and kill these people, you're going to get some much needed money, which will help you buy gear, etc. And then you go on the main mission. So I think it really embodies the nature of that very, very well. And you get a guy like Tulsa Doom, who is not like at least not until the very end. He's not like your typical like big bad sorcerer. You know, he's more of like a cult leader, but then it's like, oh, well, yeah, he turned into a snake. So he does have some magic at his disposal. But I forgot when watching this that James Earl Jones was in it. So when I went back and watched it originally to prepare for this, I was like, oh, shit, I forgot that he's the villain here. And watching it again now, I saw his haircut and I was like, well, I feel a lot less offended by Courtney Cox's bangs in Scream 3 than I do by James Earl Jones' bangs in this movie, because they gave him an offensively bad haircut. But if you want to make James Earl Jones look like a cult leading weirdo, then I guess that's the right kind of hairdo to go with. But I kept fixating on Arnold's hair because I knew there was a time in his career where he had fairly long-ish hair, but it was never this long. So I'm curious. I was like, was this a wig? Because I'm not a wig scientist. But it looked like he at least had extensions, but it's the only movie I can think of where he actually has hair of this length, because they want to sort of give him that barbarian look of never having a haircut. But he's clean shaven the whole movie for the most part as well, too.
Well, so I took note of the hairstyles. And so I'm going to say that I did notice, look, James Earl Jones looks strange. He's got the haircut. He's got the blue eyes. And I feel like in the beginning, I feel like his skin is lighter. Am I wrong? Like, or maybe it was just like because it was outside or something. It was just he looks more normal towards the end, but the whole beginning look, he is weird looking. And then you've got his two main guys, who I have names for them. So you've got the guy with the long hair and bangs too. You got his other guy. He's the guy that has the hammer. Right? Yes. He's got the hammer. He looks like, so you've got disco supergroup ABBA. You've got one of the bees is Bjorn. He looks like Bjorn from ABBA. Okay. For people listening, just Google it. Trust me. So for the rest of the movie, he was Bjorn. And then the other guy, the guy that has like the double axe or whatever he was holding by the end, he looked like Lemmy from Motorhead. So those two guys for the whole movie became Bjorn and Lemmy, just so you know. And like the hairstyles are incredible. Like the bangs are something else. You don't normally see that on men.
You don't. And I mean, even with like the other men that have long hair in this movie, most of them are not choosing this bang style. But at the end of the day, they're probably all cutting their hair with like a knife. So can't really be too mad at them. I found it funny that I was so fixated on Courtney Cox's botch job of bangs in Scream 3 that when I went back to take a look at this, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, okay, it's not the worst bangs I've ever seen on screen, at least.
Well, it's been a long time since I've seen Scream 3, so I don't remember these bangs. Now I'm curious.
Oh yeah. Uh they're bad.
Okay, I trust you.
Yeah, I guess
Um,
like at the time the movie came out, it was like a hot button issue. And it's like, I wasn't a huge Scream fan back in 2011. So I'm not really like honed in on what people thought at the time. But in going back and watching it for the purposes of this show, I was like, whoa, why did they do that to Gale Weathers? But we're not here to talk about Gale Weathers. We're here to talk about Conan. And I noticed that in the first hour or so of this movie, he's having a lot of sex. This is Conan
yes.
Destroyer already. Well, he's a slave. They give him a woman, right? And then he goes to the witch's house and he's like, well, I'm going to have sex with the witch too, of course. Right?
So look, let's talk about this witch. So one, it's hilarious that he's just walking around and ends up with this discovering this witch.
Mm-hmm.
And she does her whole, she's ready to warm him by her fire. She's just ready.
Mm-hmm.
So like, look, this is consensual. She invites him in. He's a gentleman. Conan is a gentleman, because here's the thing.
The gentleman barbarian.
So when they show the scene before this about teaching him the pleasures of women, so he's in his cage for some reason, and they provide him a topless woman who seems very confused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame him. But Conan picks up some sort of like animal pelt and briefly covers her with it. I thought that, and then like when he lays her down to do the deed, she has something nice to lay on. I thought that was very gentlemanly of Conan. He's not totally a barbarian. But yeah, so then, he meets the witch. She invites him in. Now, let's talk about this, because she does call him a barbarian, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It might be the only time that he's called a barbarian. And he wants information from her. I guess he's trying to find dupe. And her price is to get boned down. And she gives him the information, I think, mid-orgasm. That's her time to actually give this information, because she's doing a lot of moaning while she's giving information. And then she turns into her witchy form.
Yes.
And just tosses her into a fire.
Right? Just a little barrel roll and chucks her right into the fireplace.
So, but here's the funny thing. So Conan has sex with, and she flies away. She turns into whatever, an apparition, and flies away. So she's still alive, by the way. And after this experience, what does Conan do? Man, which sex makes you sleepy? He stays there.
Yeah.
It's okay. Right after that scene, he meets his BFFs, Subotai,
Mm-hmm.
who was outside the entire time, chained up. He listened to this whole thing, this whole entire time. Do you realize that? Like, Subotai is just out there listening to witch sex. It is so weird. And it's like, you know what? No wonder why they became BFFs. They shared something together.
They might even be Eskimo brothers.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, man. That scene is just, it is great. That whole sequence is fantastic. But then, so here's the thing though, like, Conan eventually, meets the love of his life, Valeria,
Mm-hmm.
and he becomes faithful. Conan is a gentleman.
That's the movie that never got made, Conan the Gentleman. That was coming after The Destroyer, but ran out of financing.
Subotai and Conan, they go to town, go carousing, get some drugs.
Yeah.
They get what is it, Black Lotus?
Yeah, I think so. Black Lotus flower.
And they get the good shit. They get Stygian, the best.
Mm-hmm.
None of that Haga dirt Black Lotus. And we're watching them walk, and he passes some prostitutes, And this is less generally. Conan is like, he rejects the sluts. He calls them sluts and just walks past. But look, man, like, I don't want to, I'm pro sex worker, so that's kind of bad. But, he's not, he actually, he doesn't, he wants to meet Valeria. He's there his destiny is to meet the love of his life. Oh, and by the way, this is where he punches the camel.
That's right. He's high, and he thinks the camel like talks shit to him or something, and he just turns and clocks it with a right hand. And he doesn't just punch it; he like KOs the camel with the right hand too. Like a camel drops.
It does, and they include that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he punches the camel, and then we get like a cut to a different angle to see the camel fall.
Yes.
So we all know directors and editors make choices. This was a choice. They want you to see the camel is KO'd. This is on purpose.
Yeah. They want you to know Conan's got a mean right hand.
That's right. But the other thing I noted this watch is that, this all happens within 5 seconds? He dismisses the sluts, quote unquote. He sees an alpaca. And he laughs at the alpaca. He thinks the alpaca is funny. The camel, though. Camel was not funny. Camel needed to be punched down. So, look, you know me. I love animals. You know how much I love animals. But look, man, this is hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yes, it is in no way a support of violence towards animals. It's just hilarious, and I doubt that he actually punched this camel in the face. But Conan 4, Revenge of the Camels, where this camel and his family all come to attack Conan the King, would be a pretty interesting watch to just have him, no sword. You have to fight off an army of camels with your bare hands, and let's see how you do, Conan. But I mean,
eventually. Sorry, go ahead.
That's one of like several ridiculous and hilarious scenes in this movie, mixed into like a pretty serious sword and sorcerer epic.
Right.
Let's do some trivia.
Time for trivia.
Okay.
All right. So, question 1. Arnold practiced with an 11-pound broadsword for this role, but how much did each broadsword actually cost?
Like the actual dollar amount?
Yeah.
Oh man. Do I get like a closest?
Closest without going over.
I'm gonna say $5,000.
You know what? That's reasonable. It was actually 10,000 apparently. So it's a staggering amount of money for a sword, but it's kind of worth it because they put that whole intro scene into like the smithing of the sword. So in that way, it's like, the sword's going to play a big role. If you're going to spend that much money on it, at least like you filmed a lot of the actual making of the sword, I think. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the whole replica sword collector thing, I feel like all those replicas are probably super expensive too. So.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, question number 2 is also a weapons question. In the scene with the snake inside like the temple hall, those were real arrows shot with a real bow and arrow into the snake's head. But who did the shooting?
So, character-wise or actor-wise? Character-wise, it's Sabotai.
Yeah, but who actually did the shooting?
Oh. I'm just gonna randomly say my guy Bjorn.
It was actually the director, John Milius. Apparently,
really?
Yeah, apparently he was a good shot, and they needed a couple pretty accurate shots there as well. So they went to the professional to shoot real arrows into that snake's head. This was not done with any kind of special effects. The snake was obviously, but a lot of the time you sort of have arrows that are like on a string that zips by. But this, he shot directly into that snake's head himself. So credit to him.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want the guy behind the camera. Yeah, just give me that thing. I'll make it look good. But he seemed pretty proficient, to be honest. So
Yeah.
question number 3, also a weapons question for some reason. What does the inscription on Arnold's sword, or Conan's sword, read?
I don't know the answer. For some reason, the first thing that popped into my head is kill them all.
I mean, I think that's the spirit of what it says. It says, suffer no guilt, ye who
Wow.
wield this in the name of Crom. So basically, kill them all.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that reminds me, there is a line in this movie that I wanted to bring up. There's some sort of scene where after like Conan finally is Conan, and he's sitting with, I guess, at dinner, I think, speaking of eating, with a bunch of other people, his trainers or his masters or whatever, and they're talking about what is best in life. And this is best in life to Conan: to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. And that last part is incredible to me for some reason. It's not enough to crush his enemies. He wants to hear the lamentation of their women. And, like, I'm being serious when I say that may be one of the most badass lines I've ever heard in a movie.
Yeah, they trained him to be a very merciless machine at that point. And yeah, at the table, they're actually going around and sort of asking like many people what the purpose of life is, basically. And it's like, oh no, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. Conan, let him know what the real meaning of life is. And it's basically death and pillaging. Death to my enemies and take everything they have.
Yeah, I guess, it's, you say it's when he becomes the killing machine. It's a culmination of what Conan was trained to become, is to hear lamentations of their women.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of quotes, the film opens with a quote from Nietzsche, of all people, which I did not expect. That says, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." So it is this journey of not just life and death, but this story of like kill or be killed, and sort of what the world looked like under those circumstances, and what it means to kind of like try to fight your way through existence when you're either going to be the killer and the king and the conqueror, or you're going to be the slave. And, it was part of sort of like 80s sword and sorcery wind of movies that were out. And I think something that's appealing about it is similar to Westerns in that, like, if you're a well-trained enough soldier, you sort of can make your own way in the world. So similarly, like with Westerns, like, oh, if you're good with the gun and you got a fast draw, you can kind of just make your way in the world and find your fortune, create your land. So like it sort of like puts your destiny in your own hands. And for a character in this story who was enslaved, who saw his people die, to then be able to forge his path in blood and violence and steel and take back the life that was taken from him, I think is interesting and not necessarily universal, but I think it's fairly easy to latch onto in that way.
Yeah, I didn't think of it as being like similar to a Western, but 100% is. Like, yeah. And thinking about, The Man with No Name trilogy, or Django, or The Last Gunfighter, like these are men who are able to live their own life because of, I guess, frankly, their gunfighting skills. You know what I mean? Similar to sword fighting skills. There is a skill to shooting a gun, just as there is a skill to wielding a sword. So yeah, and definitely like the landscape, is very Western as well when I think about it that way. That's a really good point.
Yeah, it's like venturing out in these big
Yeah.
open spaces, needing to sort of be able to survive in the wilderness. So a
Yeah.
lot of it is about survival and almost just like sheer willpower to survive,
Yeah.
I think, under dire circumstances.
Yeah, and I know I talked about how he puts together an RPG party, a role playing game
Yeah, he
party.
does.
But that another word for that is a posse, a cowboy posse, because yeah, you want to do it alone in this environment. Maybe you want to do it alone, but it's even better if you got a posse behind you too. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and I already talked, Sabotai and Valeria, you know, they and the wizard, they all band together truly for each other, and that's part of what I like. I like I like like I always say I like a story that puts together a likable group of people and they go on an adventure. And so many of my favorite things is that, you know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite TV show. Avatar: The Last Airbender. You know, these are or Cowboy Bebop even. These are some of my favorite shows, and it's just a collection of people going on adventures. And to me, like, it doesn't even matter what the adventure is because I'm just spending time with these people. And I think what Conan also has is genuinely likable characters.
Yeah, I think for the most part, you're right. I mean, they do some like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
less than savory things,
Sure.
but in the
Yeah, yeah.
world that they live in,
Yeah.
they are on the probably the right side of the spectrum when it comes to sort of like justice and morality. And very early after that Nietzsche quote, we get this speech from Conan's father where he's sort of like explaining the basics of not, and well, I guess it is kind of about life. He says, fire and wind come from the sky, from the gods of the sky. But Crom is your god. Crom, and he lives in the earth. Once giants lived in the earth, Conan. And in the darkness of chaos, they fooled Crom, and they took him, or they took from him the enigma of steel. Crom was angered, and the earth shook. Fire and wind struck down these giants, and they threw their bodies into the waters. But in their rage, the gods forgot the secret of steel and left it on the battlefield. We who found it are just men, not gods, not giants, just men. The secret of steel has always carried with it a mystery. You must learn its riddle, Conan. You must learn its discipline. For no one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. And then he points to the sword and says, this you can trust. So he tells him at a very young age, like, steel is the ultimate authority. Like, if you wield the sword and you're good at it, you can make your own way in life. And, you're not going to be able to trust anybody anyway. So you might as well be able to defend yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's in the movie for a reason. And I mean, he does everything, he references Crom all the time. So that's not forgotten as far as that's who his god is. So to a degree, like his god is Crom, his god is steel, and he becomes a master of steel. That it's as much about the sword as it is Conan to a degree.
Yeah, because there's a couple instances where he sort of renounces Crom. I think probably because what happened to his family,
Yeah.
There's a moment where he prays to him and he's like, I never pray to you, but if you don't help me in this moment, like, to hell with you, kind of thing. And then he's explaining also to Subutai in like when they're talking about which gods do they pray to, like in the old world, who are these gods? And he says, like, I pray to Crom, but I seldom pray because he doesn't listen. And it reinforces the idea that Conan is someone who's going to always have to sort of make his own way, answer his own prayers. If he wants something done, this isn't something that you leave to the gods. It's not something that you ask for. It's something that you take by force.
Yeah, and I took note of that conversation too, because like again, this is after Sabotai like becomes his BFF. And I mean that. Like, I'm not just trying to be funny, because like what I noted is that God conversation is like two boys talking about which superhero is cooler.
Yeah.
Like one is like, my God laughs at your God, and the other one's like, my God is stronger. And like I think that's a really neat moment because that's how that's how men become friends, frankly. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
no, when you think about it, it's like, having these debates about which team is better or which actor is better. Like this, I thought that was a really neat moment, actually.
Yeah, and it humanizes them in a
Yeah.
way where we maybe haven't had that experience before, and even says like Crom laughs at your four wins, and so
Yeah.
joking that like, oh yeah, your
Yeah.
god is weaker than mine, and even though my god doesn't listen to me and I don't really pray to him, I still know that he's the strong one and that he would win in a fight if there were gods. So yeah, a lot of that
Yeah.
sort of like instinctive tribalism.
Right. And like, so, bouncing way to the end of the movie, but it ties to this. We got Valeria, and I know we're going way ahead, but eventually she gets killed. And, Conan has to do, the ceremonial lighting, whatever, pyre, the ceremonial pyre.
Mhm.
And Sabatai starts crying. And, he says, because he knows Conan won't, you know? So again, like that shows like the bond that they formed, that Sabotai, like, is there for Conan the entire time. Even when Conan has to be strong, has to, carry on, even though the love of his life is gone. But Sabotai is still there to support him, even emotionally. I mean, look what I just said right now. This is a epic adventure, and I'm talking about the emotions of the male characters. And I think the reason why I'm making a fine point of this is that this movie is deeper than I think people might give it credit for initially. I mean, that's a genuine friendship.
Yeah, and compared to some of the other sword and sorcery movies that existed at this time, too, like those are sort of similarly adventurous, team building. You get the camaraderie aspect of like the goofy characters that don't necessarily like typically fit together, having to work together, the putting together a team, those things. But yeah, sort of the emotional burden is not necessarily as heavy as it is in something like this. And you get a character who, saw his village burned, his dad was burned alive, his mom was
Yeah,
beheaded while he
yeah,
was holding her hand. And then this woman that he loves also dies at the hands of his enemy. So Conan's gone through a lot. And it really does sort of bridge the gap to Conan the Destroyer, which comes after this. And like you start to understand like how and why he becomes the destroyer and not just the barbarian. Because this movie ends with sort of like a future glance of him being the king and like having had all this success and been at the top. And then the second movie, I think, just goes back in time and tells a little bit more of the journey up that mountain. But he was crucified in this movie as well.
Oh
Before
yeah, that's
before he
right.
gets rescued, and
Jeez.
so yeah, Conan, gone through a lot, enslaved, crucified, nearly butchered, but he does bite out the throat of a vulture that's eating him while he's still alive,
Oh
and then he almost chokes on the feathers from that vulture.
no, man.
But he's a
Like,
savage, he's a survivor.
right. Yeah. Yeah, he gets crucified. What a movie. Seriously, what a movie. Dude just gets crucified. And that's just like something that I can even just forget about.
Yeah,
Um,
in the context of the film, it's like such a blip on the radar, I think, from everything else that's going on.
yeah, and I did note actually that there's a scene where like it actually shows nails through his ankles. Like he is
Mhm.
crucified. Like, I mean not literally Arnold, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
and like somehow like he lives to tell the tale, man.
And
Um,
doesn't he also like fight an army of ghosts or something?
does he? I don't know.
It's before they get into Doom's big like orgy chamber with the big old vat of soup.
Oh, the soup. Yeah, I think he does. All right, let's talk about this orgy.
Let's talk about the orgy.
um, like what's going on in this orgy? Like, look, I get sex is going on, but like they have this whole background like scene that they go through, right? Where I guess the slaves or whatever are making the body part soup for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's their job in life. Is we're gonna take, I guess that's like recycling or something, and like I guess they gotta do something with all the dead bodies.
Soylent Green.
I know, and it is green. And
It
like,
is.
you know, and there's and like they bring it and just dump it down. Like this normally would be like a spa setting, but I mean, are these people like snacking on in between bouts of, you know, orgy behavior? Are they just like snacking on like body parts? What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as like it's very cultish, right? So if you're in the cult, you participate in the orgies, and so it's kind of maybe like blood sacrifice ritual kind of thing. Because I think there was a ritual sacrifice of one of the women in the cult as well at one point that we see on screen, and so I think maybe like the consumption of the human soup is like giving yourself over to Tulsa Doom and the cult. It's like a test of loyalty, I think, maybe more so than any kind of nutritional benefit you get from the soup. But who knows? I mean, I haven't had the soup, so I don't know if it's really beneficial long term, but it doesn't look appetizing.
No. And so what I remember what happened, like, well, I remember I have notes about it. So what happened is, so Conan's crucified, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I guess they have to do some sort of like ritual to like, I guess save his life because he's crucified, right? And I
He's
think
dying, yeah.
Right, he's dying. So they mark up his body with like all this writing, which looks really cool. Like that must have taken forever for them to do. Because that's not special, you know, that's actual writing on Arnold. And then like I guess that's so what Valeria does is she fights off the spirits.
That's right.
Yeah. Because so we get to see Valeria in action, you know, and that's part of what I really like about this movie is that Valeria is not just like a sex object, you know, like she's not just like the prize. So often like women are like the orgy shows women as the prize for the evil. You know what I'm saying? Like there's always going to be, even in the first temple, the snake temple, it's just women, you know, just like these women, you know, stripping naked and sacrificing themselves to the snake. But Valeria, like she can kick ass on her own, you know, and that for me, I love that, you know, and when she passes away, she becomes a Valkyrie, you know, so, but that's the whole ghost. I guess it's like evil spirits wanting to take his soul. Yeah.
So she's there to defend him in that sequence. And then when she passes, you know, she says, let me breathe my last breath into your mouth.
I know.
And so it's like, it's weird, but it is kind of sweet in that she's like passing the end of her sort of life force to Conan in that moment. And, you know, for me, I'm like, I don't know if I would like want that like from my marriage to be, hey, babe, if you're dying, breathe your last breath into my mouth kind of thing. It's like, I'll hold your hand. I'll be there with you. I'm not sure I want to drain the last of your oxygen, but I think it is in this movie, there's a lot of rituals, right? And there's a lot of old gods. There's a lot of superstition and things like that. So I think it's fitting with the character that she is and the relationship that they have.
It is. And they, you know, they go into the temple and they go, you know, they crash the orgy. And there's the cool effect with Doom turning into a snake, which I thought was really cool looking.
Yeah.
You know, and then for some reason he bounces, which is kind of bad timing. I don't know what the story with that was. Like he goes into his hole. But then like, so they take the princess, because that's the whole point of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's their mission, is to take the king's princess, who, you know, has been seduced by Doom. And then like, you know, they're trying to get out of the temple, and we see Valeria in action before she gets killed. like, she takes on 4 dudes at once. And she does this really cool move. And this is seriously the first time I watched this movie. This was the moment I fell in love with it. Like, we talked about so much, but she does this awesome move where she like bounces off the wall, kicks off the wall to stab someone. Like using like, I guess, the point of that move, I guess, is to use the force of kicking off the wall. And I'm like, holy shit, Valeria's a badass. So like seriously, if you want to know the moment for me where I was like, yes, this is my movie, it was that moment right there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because she's fun to watch, and they all sort of have their own skill sets. As we said, putting together a sort of party like in an RPG where everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. I feel like she would have been a great Chitara had there been a live action Thundercats in the 80s. And even in the new comic series, I think it's produced by Image, I want to say, but I might be wrong about that. There is cover art where Chitara is the solo character on the cover, and I was like, I can totally see Valeria in this setting.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Sandal Bergman. But yeah, all the stunt work is done really well. I mean, Arnold did all his own stunts from what I heard. And I think that gives the movie the kind of authenticity you would want. And, he said that it's God's gift to his career. Right. Because this was like the first time that he was like taken seriously as an actor for a change. Because, the muscles are one thing, the accent is kind of a hard thing to get over, which you saw in Hercules in New York. They just ADR'd his whole voice out of the movie.
Right.
But you get to this point and it's like you're using his charisma, his physicality, which is very important to this role. And the director's cut has more dialogue of his actually, which when I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to see if I can find the director's cut because it gives more insight into who Conan is. But by stripping out a lot of the dialogue, it does make the moments where he speaks more impactful because, okay, now you have to listen. This is someone who solves everything basically with the sword, with might, with force. So when he's actually going to say something and be thoughtful about it, it's like, oh, wow, like he's not just, muscles and hair and steel. He actually is a very thoughtful person who just doesn't speak because culturally, I think Subutai says at one point too, like he's Sumerian, so he doesn't cry. I cry for him, and that's the scene.
Yeah.
So it is this acknowledgement that culturally, like he just doesn't acknowledge these types of things, and it doesn't mean he doesn't feel them. He just doesn't say them out loud. But there's a great scene in this movie too. It's a lot earlier on, but it's where Conan is escaping slavery, and they don't show the whole sequence play out, but it's like he's being chased by a pack of wolves and he runs up onto these rocks and he's like fighting them off, trying to survive. Right. And then it's like a little bit of a short sequence there. And then there's a cut. And then in the next scene, he's running somewhere else, but he's wearing a bunch of fur. And so it's like, oh, he killed all those wolves and turned it into an outfit. And, I get that you're not going to like show all the animals get killed on screen and everything, but it was just a funny moment because they don't acknowledge that he actually does kill any of them. Like there's not even the sound of like, the dog whimper that you hear in some movies just to imply that happens in the background. Right. It's just, no, he's on the rocks. He's fighting them off. Hard cut. Wolf jacket. So I was like, all right, he's a little bit more crafty than we give him credit for as well. And, speaking of the stunts, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, damn, Arnold's horse takes some bumps in this movie. Like this poor horse really went through the ringer in terms of like actual physicality and stunt work. And I don't know in 1982, 1981, if this was the kind of movie that would have someone on set to like oversee animal cruelty issues. And I don't know if it necessarily is cruelty, but I was like, wow. I was like, this horse is going through it. And I'm sure it wasn't the only horse that was sort of on the front lines there. But again, just points back to like the real physicality of the stunt work and not even trying to get away from that. Like we want the authenticity, we want it to look real, we want it to look good. So we're going to do everything that we can within reason. And if I take away one thing from the movie, sure, it's not like, hey, this is probably what barbarian era was like, but it does let me feel that the people that put everything into this movie just left it all out there, right? It was like if this was going to be Arnold's last movie and it was going to be a failure, like he left it out there for this movie.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things. I'm gonna admit, I didn't notice that he was wearing the wolf pelts. So I can't notice everything. You know what I mean? But thank you for pointing that out. That's really interesting. Two, yeah, like the whole horse and then the camel thing. I think about that a lot, like with movies in general, like that have horses. I don't know how they do it. Like I don't know how they do it where they don't hurt the animals. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just I guess tremendous work that the filmmakers and the animal handlers do. Because and then on top of it, Arnold or any other actor working with a horse or a camel is putting themselves on the line too. I mean, that's a massive animal, and there's a lot of trust that goes into that. So I feel like that that's just something that is very impressive for the horse as well. Like to be trained that well and to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's inherent danger there. A horse kicks you in the face, you're in deep shit.
Or if it falls on you,
Yeah.
like that. I don't know how much a horse weighs. I'm not even going to speculate. But like, yeah. But yes, I mean, the word epic is thrown around a lot. But I think it really does apply to this movie. It is an epic, but as you said, they leave it all out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we get great action, great characters, sort of great scale and scope, an excellent villain, creepy, little overly horny, even in a world of horny people, terrible haircut on the villain as well. And we get like great visual effects when it actually matters. Like at the time, that sort of guess it's like stop motion shape shifting for Tulsa Doom into the snake is excellent, like you said.
Yeah.
And then we get very good practical effects with that big snake that they built too. When Arnold takes the sword and chops that thing's head off, like that is all filled with like meat and blood, like not real, of course, but like it looks really good and it's so well made that it takes Arnold a couple of whacks with his sword to chop all the way through that snake's neck.
Yeah, and like you said, the director himself shot those arrows. Like they want to. I mean, this is true for every movie, but like I think you've been saying, like they wanted to make a great movie. Then they took pains to make a great movie. You see it on the screen. So like the final. I want to talk about the final moments.
Please,
The whole Conan versus Conan. Finally confronting Doom. Tulsa Doom. So like first, I wanted to say like it's a beautiful scene because it's at night, and you've got everyone with torches and the chanting. It's very atmospheric. It's very and I guess one of my questions is what is Doom actually selling?
Yeah.
Do you understand the question? Like, I wasn't sure. Like, I'm not saying this is negative, but like, what is he selling to the people, or is he just trying to say a bunch of shit to just make himself their god?
Yeah, I think he's a cult leader is the way I look at it, and with most cult leaders, their sales pitch is that they have some secret to life that nobody else has. And if you listen to them and you give them money and you follow them and do X, Y, and Z, then you can have the
Yeah.
secret. And so for Doom, maybe that's magic or immortality or the shape shifting, like, and I think in the context of this movie in particular, we go back to that scene where Subutai and Conan are talking about gods, right? There
Right.
is this idea of what is really a god, like what is nature, what is
Mhm.
the notion of a supreme being, and in the midst of all that, old gods, new gods, no gods,
Yeah.
you have someone like Tulsa Doom who is maybe hypnotizing people with his soup, so maybe there's some sort of psychoactive agent in there that makes people a little
Yeah.
bit more susceptible to suggestion. And then on top of that, like there's a little bit of wizardry. So he's kind of like a magician, like the Wizard of
Right.
Oz, how he had the big head and seemed like this omniscient
Right.
presence, and really is just the guy behind the curtain. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on too. But the wizard was also not necessarily a cult leader, but he was selling the people this false idea of what he was in order to maintain power and control. And we get that here with Doom. Like, in a world, especially where force is everything, having a large, obedient army matters a lot. And if you make them obedient through the promise of eternal life, or you're literally just basically poisoning them with something that makes them obedient, I think that works in his favor because he's been able to conquer all these things. He was able to ride into Conan's village and just murder everybody, take everything that he wanted. And, there's a scene at the end where I want to say he impersonates Conan's mom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He sort of, I forget exactly what he does, but he like projects her voice. So he does have some sort of magic at his
Right.
disposal, but a lot of it is manipulative, right? It's not just like, oh, here, I'm granting you eternal life and now you're a super soldier. I'm turning you into a Conan like person. You now have like a bunch of muscles and strength and dexterity and stamina, all these things. So I think in terms of what he's selling is an alternative to this sort of like life on the road of you're going to be alone and trying to survive and you have to fight. Like if you join the cult, you'll get fed, you'll be part of this community, but you have to do my bidding.
Right. And so one of the things that I thought about, as far as like being manipulative, is so Doom gives so Conan confronts Doom up at the top of the stairs, and Doom gives this whole speech, basically saying that he created Conan. So he does acknowledge finally, like, dude, this is your fault that he's in front of you right now, ready to kill you.
Yeah.
But he gives like the whole, from what I felt like a Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker speech,
Mhm.
or a Joker in Dark Knight Batman speech, where it's like, you need me, like I created you, in a way to like, I guess, hopefully turn Conan to his side. So I just thought if you thought that made sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when he's sort of faced with the reality that there's probably, there's probably a lot of kids that saw their parents die at the hands of Tulsa Doom, right? And I imagine that there's some of them that probably wanted revenge that were killed along the way, but there's probably only one Conan. So figure maybe like 1 in 10,000. So maybe Doom has never even really like seen this before in terms of someone who was able to survive everything thrown at him, get better, get stronger, and make it all the way back to actually confront Doom about his sins as a person and what the actual cost of all the things that Doom has done up until that point. This all manifests physically in Conan. And so I think on the one hand, Doom recognizes that this person is a legitimate threat to me, but also he's so arrogant that he believes that, oh, I could just like convince him that like I'm your dad now and
Right.
work for me. Like you're better than that guy that's by my side anyway. You're a more skilled warrior and you could have all of this, you see all this orgies and all this soup and like all these people, like this could all be part of your life here. And so on the one hand, yes, he wants to recruit him. On the other hand, he's trying to like diffuse the situation. And I think it's just the best way he knows how is to sort of offer the thing that he offers everybody else, which is like join the cult.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. And that's probably was the smartest thing at the moment because obviously Conan is far stronger than him.
Yeah, well, he was he was never going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." He was just like, "Oh, yeah, I was young once, beheading."
Yeah, and he does try that, doesn't he? He does try that.
He does.
Like when he captures Conan, like he before he crucifies him, he's like, "Oh yeah, that was young me." People change. It's fine. But yeah, and then like he kills Doom with his broken father's sword, which is a great detail. It's a fantastic
Speaking of
detail.
beheadings.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, hey, look at that. So like, yeah, that's a perfect way to get revenge for his mom. And then like he throws Doom's head down the stairs. And I seriously think it's a fantastic image. Just the head just going down, just rolling down the stairs. And then sorry, I'm just gonna like I think this final scene's incredible. Like, and then like I guess Doom is dead, so I guess the spell is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And now all the cult members line up to toss their torches in the pool. And again, it's another look, man, the torches are beautiful. And it's a beautiful moment. And what I wrote in my notes, and I don't know if this is gonna make any sense to you, but it feels like it reminded me a little of the very end of the Truman Show. And I feel like it's going to be a spoiler. So
the Truman Show's 30 years old. So
spoiler alert if you haven't finished the Truman Show. So Truman leaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they show like all the people watching TV. And for them, the spell was gone. And like one of the last lines is, "What else is up?" And it's so funny how like people can be in like a spell, and as soon as that spell is broken, like people just move on. Like it was just such a. I know it's kind of like not that important of a point to make, but it just reminded me of the Truman Show and how it's so funny how like these people who are like ready to die for him are like, all right, what else is going on?
Yeah, and I think in the context of this world again, that they're looking for answers, right?
Yeah.
And so I always look at things like, despite my own personal thoughts on faith, religion, etc., I don't begrudge anybody their faith and the search for answers. And in this world, Doom gave these people the best answer for the most part. I don't necessarily look at them to like, hey, we all just want to be like evil snake people that go around murdering. Obviously, like he's got his crew that when he was younger, it's like this was the beheading team that they went in, they raised a bunch of villages, killed people for no reason kind of thing. But these people that are mostly just in robes and sort of being there to like chant, carry the torches, like create the periphery of Doom's crew, those people saw very violently that their god in this context was very, very mortal and not only died, but had his head tossed into the crowd. And Conan's not interested in replacing him in that role either. So it's not like, hey, let's all just worship Conan now. It was like, okay, well, we need to figure out something else to do because like this chapter is over. Our God that we believed in proved to not be real. So now what do we do? Well, we're going to literally like extinguish the light that we thought that he was. So it's very symbolic for them all to come and extinguish this light that they perceived that he was bringing them. And then it's like, well, we're going back into the darkness to try to like find the next thing, like whether that's Crom or whether that's the god of the four winds or whatever. It's like you're sort of cast like dust back into the darkness to now just continue to search and do what Conan has been doing. So it's very interesting and symbolic in the way that that film ends.
You're making my comparison to the Truman Show make more sense because celebrity.
Yeah.
Celebrities are gods now. Truman in the Truman Show was a massive celebrity. And he like Conan decided to forsake that and be like, nope. And then like all the people that were like worshiping at the TV were like, what's next? Just like these people, they have to figure out what's next. So they start, in the movies, change the channel. What's next? But back to Conan. You helped me put this together. All I wrote in my note is Conan swinging a burning oil lamp into the temple to burn it is cool as shit. It's cool as shit. But like you kind of made me realize that's also symbolic too. That's him showing he's not interested in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
His response to the temple, his response to that kind of ideology is to burn it down. So I think, look, man, I already had this thing at 4.5 stars. I raised it to 5 stars. I know there might be people listening who think 5 stars for Conan the Barbarian is crazy. No, man, this is a 5-star movie. This movie's incredible.
They are your stars. You can wield them however you like.
Oh no. I think me and you are very much of that belief. So yeah. So
I agree that it is sort of his declaration that what Doom brought to the world was not something to be worshipped. And, his destruction of the temple puts him back out in the dark as well. But he has been there and he's willing to take that on in search of like what we'll call like the truth, because he doesn't really adhere to the ways of Crom. He's like he said, I don't pray to him. He doesn't listen. The one time he does pray, he's like, if you don't like save her life or something, then to hell with you, that kind of thing. So it seems like he's denounced religion in his own way at that point. And then the destruction of the temple is, very decidedly condemnation of the religion that Doom brought to the world. And I never looked at this movie before as like an allegory about organized religion or faith or anything like that. But the more I think about it, the more I think that those themes are very much front and center to the story and the characters here. And Conan being willing to go back, into the darkness and like start looking again, or be okay with like, hey, I'm not looking. I just have to take life as it comes and it's one day at a time. Like that is an interesting response for him throughout the course of this, because he could have very easily been like, no, I'm the king now, you worship me, and just absorbed all those followers. I don't think any of those people would have been like, oh, okay, well, no thanks, and been like, oh, well, we need a leader and you're the leader now, you're obviously the most powerful one, so please. And we see at the end that he goes on to become a king at some point, but it isn't in the way that he's just leading some sect of religious zealots.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. Talk about religion does permeate through the movie. And, I will say, ironically, when I got interrupted before, one of the interruptions was Mormons coming to my door. So, and I only mention that to mention that it's interesting we're talking about this, and I live in a very Mormon community. So it's going to happen. And I want to just say they're always very nice, super nice people. But that's an example of, in reality, in real life, we're all searching for answers ourselves in the dark, trying to figure out what's going on. Where are we going?
Well, those Mormons come to your door. Ding dong. Hi. Have you heard of the religion or the Church of Tulsa Doom? No, I don't have time for this right now. But yeah, I think it does sort of just reflect on this thing of like, maybe we are alone, maybe there is nothing higher. Yeah. And what we have on this earth is what we get. And that is sort of what Conan embodies. And he's had a rough life, this character, throughout his journey that we see. And I think in Destroyer, it goes on to, have a little bit more fun with the sort of adventure-y battle nature of it. I think that's the one where we get Wilt Chamberlain and Red Sonja. He puts together a different crew with different skills, but it still has a strong female lead as well. And there's wizards, and I more vividly remember the visuals of that one. I kind of want to go back and watch it now too, since I've seen this one more recently, because there are some like visuals that are burned into my memory because I watched Destroyer first before Barbarian. So that's kind of how I was introduced to it. But because you had mentioned your 5 stars, that's a good segue to get us to Critics Corner.
Oh.
So let's see. We're starting with overall Metascore of 43 for Conan, which like is just shockingly low. I mean, okay,
Yes.
maybe people don't like it. I get it. But to think that critically this movie was received at that low of a level is really surprising to me.
And makes it qualified for your
Oh,
podcast.
it sure does. I mean, this is what I live for, though, is movies like this that are clearly good and clearly enjoyed by the people. The critics just had a sword up their ass about, and we start at the bottom of the board, and this is Time. Richard Schickel gave it a 10 on a scale of 100. And he says, Conan is sort of a psychopathic Star Wars. Stupid and stupefying. So, I mean, I don't think it's stupid or stupefying, but I do like it as a psychopathic Star Wars.
Yeah, I do too. And I think he was a little too taken with his little stupefying thing. I think he was more interested in his sentences he was putting together than actually looking at the movie.
Yeah, Mr. Schickel. I mean, yeah, he's obviously not, talking about this movie in depth for several hours. And he just probably didn't like it on first watch and was like, well, that was dumb. I don't like the big muscles and the sword swinging. But there's really a lot going on that isn't just Arnold in a loincloth,
Oh, yeah.
This movie could have been dumbed down significantly more to just be Arnold in a loincloth and just have him kill people and be buff. But like we said, there's a lot of themes when it comes to what this movie represents and the time that it was made in comparison to other movies that are sort of the same cloth. So, all right, Mr. Schickel, I'm sorry, but can't ride with that. But psychopathic Star Wars does sound fun, to be fair.
Yes, absolutely.
So we got a couple of 30s on the board with the New York Times and the Chicago Reader. So between those two, you can pick your poison.
As a native New Yorker, I gotta pick New York Times.
New York Times, this is Vincent Canby. He says, Conan the Barbarian is an extremely long, frequently incoherent, ineptly staged adventure fantasy set in a prehistoric past.
How is it incoherent? We just spent a couple hours talking about very clearly about what happens in this movie.
I don't know. And I mean, it's only 2 hours and 9 minutes. So it's not like it's even insanely long in comparison to other films that exist in the world. I mean, okay, for the 80s, for an adventure film, maybe 2 hours and 9 minutes was kind of long, but it's definitely not incoherent. It's probably far more coherent than most people would give it credit for. And I don't know how you would call this ineptly staged. I mean, so much thought and effort and emphasis went into the physical sets and the design and the costumes. Like, this is far from an inept offering.
Yeah, like the tempo, I think we said, looks incredible. And even the tree that he gets crucified on, that tree looks pretty amazing. Yeah, no, I don't know what his deal is.
That's the tree of woe, all right. That tree had a hard life before Conan got there.
Yeah.
Well, let's climb the board and get into the 50s. We got two 50s on the board as well. We've got the Globe and Mail in Toronto and TV Guide magazine.
Oh, you want me to pick? I don't know. You know what? Let's do a TV Guide. I don't know why.
TV Guide magazine, a nameless review, gave it a 50, but it says a series of meaningless adventures punctuated with a lot of clanky, very bloody swordplay. Conan the Barbarian is best remembered for a scene in which Schwarzenegger punches out a camel. I mean, look, okay, we have both talked about the camel punch, but in hindsight, that is not the most remembered scene in Conan, I don't think.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Oh, man. And again, I know, I think I said, I love animals, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's just so hilarious.
Yeah, he just one punches that camel unconscious.
And they switched to a different camera angle for it.
And it's like, yeah, he's wasted. And I think he thinks the camel's like talking shit or something. And he looks at it, he's like, what did you say? Just knocks it out cold. So yes, a crazy, ridiculous moment. But honestly, like when you think of sort of silliness in this movie, that's maybe like one of the only things that I can think of that's just outright silly. But it's a scene where they're like drinking and partying and spending all this money that they just stole. So of course it's good. They're going to have fun and do something dumb, So I don't really have any kind of problem with that. But yeah, I mean, look, maybe this was going to be like, he's like, I was going to give it a 10, but then that camel punch brought it up to a 50. So if I remember nothing of this movie in 40 years, I remember the camel punch.
Yes.
There's a 67 on the board, but it's boring. So we're going to jump over that one. And there's two 75s. And we're both actually people that I read on here a lot, but because one of them is Roger Ebert, I always default to Ebert.
So Roger Ebert is, I will flat out tell you, the reason why I joined Twitter is because I found out Roger Ebert was on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
That is a fact. So that should give you an idea of my overall feelings about Roger Ebert.
I wish he was alive and still on Twitter, because the way that film Twitter is right now, it would be really crazy to have a guy like Roger Ebert in the middle of that. It would just be the Wild West, even more so.
I'm not going to try to be like, every movie, I wonder what he would think about. But there are movies still where I'm like, man, I wish he was still alive so I could read his review about this.
Yeah. Well, we get to read a little bit of his review about this one. He gave it a 75. So that's a 3 out of 4 on the Ebert scale, which is good. He says, I liked a lot of it myself. And with me, a few broadswords and leather jerkins go a long way. So look, a little bit like self-indulgent, but this is maybe the most personal thing I've ever heard Roger Ebert say about a movie on any of the reviews that I've read of his throughout this show. I don't think I've ever heard him mention himself and sort of like his preconceived bias in favor of broadswords and leather jerkins. So, hey, you know what? It's okay to feel a certain way about a movie because it speaks to something about you, And I think that's sort of the balance in criticism, is that like if you try to just like step outside and be as objective as possible, it's very like you're never going to be able to be completely objective because you're not a machine, so you're always going to have some biases and stuff that shape the way that you look at things. So rather than even try to operate from that perspective, I think, hey, go all the way to the other side of the spectrum and embrace all of the things that make you you and why this movie speaks to you in a certain way. So credit to Raj, broadswords and leather jerkins.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Roger Ebert, I don't always agree with him. I really don't. Like, there's times where I'm like, no, that's, I disagree with you. But that I can't hold that. Like, if there's anyone that clearly had his biases and his own feelings about things and stuff he supports, stuff he didn't, it's Roger Ebert. What makes him great is that he's so great at, there's many things that make him great, but he's an amazing writer. He was fantastic at expressing himself. And he at least made you, he didn't just say something, even though his movie talks about how he hated the movie and things suck. He always said more than that. He justified at least his feelings always. So yeah, man, like I'm glad he enjoyed this movie. He certainly is one to understand, I think, when a movie was supposed to be fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's something that, a lot of his contemporary film critics like can't seem to get out of their own way in that regard. So it makes sense why he became sort of like the preeminent voice in media film criticism, and why him and Siskel or Roper, as well, why that show meant so much to film history, honestly, and to film fans. So, hey, credit to Raj.
Yeah, no one's going to Roger Ebert for an unbiased opinion. You're going to Roger Ebert for a Roger Ebert opinion.
Yeah. And there's very few critics who can have that big of a personality in the space of film media. So that's not easy to do. But we've got one more score on the board, and it's an 8. It's from Empire. It's also uncredited, which is sad because they gave it an 80, and I want to give credit where credit is due. It says, it is easy to criticize Conan, cheesy, dated, and ever so slightly fascist. Conan is the ultimate Aryan, punishing the weak and defending the strong while looking great in thigh-high boots. But while all that's true, for Arnie fans, this film still rocks.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm happy he liked it, but did he say he was punishing the weak?
Punishing the weak and defending the strong, which I think he got that backwards.
Yes. Like Conan raised himself from nothing.
Yeah.
To end the reign of the strongest person in this area of this, fictional world, and freed all these. I mean, he walks amongst the people when he's approaching the temple. These are not powerful people. These are the opposite of powerful people. And he frees them. So, hey, man, thanks for the 80. I don't know if you really understood what was going on.
Yeah, and we were just talking about people like bringing their own biases into the movie, and it's like I'm trying to think of any moment where he actually punishes someone weak, and other than like defeating people in combat who are also strong people that he just happens to be stronger than. I don't see him punishing anyone that's weak, at least in not that I can recall off the top of my head. And when it comes to defending the strong, he mostly defeats other strong people throughout the course of the film. The only person that you would say he might be defending are his cohorts, which adds up. And then the king sent him on a mission to go rescue the daughter. So it's like he's not really defending the king, but he's protecting the daughter. But he was hired to do that. But he does look great in the thigh-high boots. But it is interesting to see that this was like, oh, this guy thinks it's fascist, but also is like, gave it the highest score on the board. So maybe whoever wrote this is like, hey, I'm into the fascism. But,
Yeah, I mean, like, we didn't talk about, like, the whole thing where he finally kills Bjorn and Lemmy.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was a tough fight. He had to set up traps. Like, even Mako got involved. Like, it required the whole party, to defeat those two guys and the other, the other henchmen to finally free the princess, well, hey, like I said, thanks for the 80.
Yeah, thanks for the 80. I don't see the fascism, but the movie does still rock.
Yeah.
So we'll take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to cover about this movie that we didn't get a chance to? You got anything left in your notes?
I mean, nothing super important. I think we really discussed this movie extremely well, and I was able to express why I think it's a 5-star movie. Yeah, I mean, nothing super special, except I do have a haiku.
By all means.
The internet's amazing. You know what I decided to Google? A syllable counter. Ran through a syllable counter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, could I do it on my own? Of course, I have an English degree. But the internet makes you lazy. So
it does. You only got 17 syllables to work with total, so make them count.
So this is me. Definitely support this idea. I think it's a nice idea. All right. Punching a camel. Gathering an RPG party. Crashing a gory orgy.
I mean,
that's what the movie's about.
Beat by beat right there. Punch that camel. Uh, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that you circled back and
Of
made sure
course.
you got it in. The you know, in watching this movie and thinking about doing something like Schwarzenegger, where I want to do like all Schwarzenegger stuff, because there's so
Dude.
many, like Raw
Yeah.
Deal, and so many of the really bad ones that we can get into. I realized watching this, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the only actor, maybe the only person on Earth who screams in an accent.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like I've heard him yell in movies, right? Like he screams in Kindergarten Cop, like "Shut up, shut up, shut up," and you can hear his accent while he's yelling. Um, I've seen other movies, Running Man, for example, where he's screaming. He's like, "I'm gonna, I hope you save room for that contract because I'm gonna fucking make you eat it," whatever he says. But it's like so you can hear the accent, you can hear him yelling, but the ADR when they go back and do the fight scenes of just the weird groaning sounds in the middle of a fight, I'm just like, that is such a weird choice, but it is so distinctly Arnold Schwarzenegger that you
Yeah.
cannot mistake it for anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. All the efforts like are that they recorded are definitely him. Like we were talking about like, his accent. And we at the beginning I mentioned Raw Deal. I mean, the dude, it's a mob movie. And like, but I think a lot of this obviously is in celebration of Arnold Schwarzenegger as, the massive movie star he became. And this was part of the genesis of that.
Yes.
And as I said, towards the beginning, I actually watched Safety Last today, which is the old 1923 silent film where the most famous image is of the Harold Lloyd hanging on the clock. You know, because he's like climbing a building. That's the whole point of
Mhm.
this movie. And so coincidentally, like um, you know, I really do think he would have been a fantastic silent film actor because, like you said, he does so much with so little as far as dialogue in this movie, but not once are you not riveted by his performance.
Yeah, and you could have gotten away in the silent film era without having to ever like deal with his voice. Like he may have never, you know, become the kind of star that we see
Yeah.
now and that we recognize, but like he definitely had the look, like the chiseled jawline features and stuff. And like you see that in later films where maybe they put him in a suit or something and he looks more like a classic Hollywood star than he does shirtless in the vast majority of movies that he has post 80s basically. But it'd be interesting to see him in a role where he's in a silent film, but since we're speaking of other movies, I always ask people at the end, what is a good gateway drug movie for Conan? So, for somebody who has seen Conan and wants to get into more sword and sorcery stuff, or for someone who hasn't seen Conan but they maybe like some other sword and sorcery stuff, like what's a good jumping off point?
So I don't know. I kind of vaguely realized you were going to ask me this question. Um, you know, I keep thinking about like you're mentioning like westerns,
Mhm.
and there's probably a good western comp to this. Um, Part of me wants to just like say that if you like westerns, like the ones that I mentioned, like Django or the Man with No Name trilogy or um, Johnny Guitar, Last Gunfighter, anything where there's, a character who's fighting against the people in power. Um, I think Conan would be a movie you should check out amongst that context. Um, Certainly, if you are an RPG fan of video games like Diablo, definitely check this out.
This would
I know
make
it's
for
not
a
the
really fun video game, honestly.
yeah. I know it's not quite the best, most succinct answer, and I apologize,
Yeah, it's fine.
but hopefully it makes some sort of sense.
I had to think carefully for this because I thought I had narrowed it down, but I don't think I have because my first initial reaction was Beastmaster because that's the one that I sort of like grew up
Yeah.
with that got me into the genre. But we recently watched Hawk the Slayer as part of a cinema shit show watch party, and that was like a ridiculous amount of fun, way more fun and less serious than Conan. So if you like that side of the spectrum, I think that's a good choice. But also while watching this, I couldn't help myself just thinking that like this is almost Gladiator, way before Gladiator, right? Gladiator takes a lot of inspiration from this movie.
Yeah.
And, I think that might be a good 1-2 punch with Conan. If you watch them back to back, especially, I think you'd see a lot of similarities.
I haven't seen Gladiator in flipping forever. So, like, I've seen it, of course, and like sometimes I get reminded that Joaquin Phoenix, that was like an early Joaquin Phoenix movie
Hmm.
that probably helped catapult him. And Joaquin
Oh, yeah.
Phoenix is like, I don't know, man. I'm just gonna say top five favorite actors for me, like male actors.
Yeah.
If I, like I from To Die For was the first movie that made me like, oh. But then, yeah, man, he was incredible in Gladiator. So yeah, you know what? Maybe I should throw on Gladiator. It's been decades, but hey, man, I like Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I haven't
So
seen it in a while myself either, but
yeah,
I watched it a lot when it had like first come out, and then I have the
yeah,
collector's DVD box, so and I've seen it plenty of times, and it is sort of one of the roles that it didn't make Joaquin Phoenix, but it made him the kind of person that people want to watch all the time because it's
yeah,
such a charismatic performance. And, you know, he's one of those actors where basically anything he touches is something that I'm going to be interested in just for what he brings to the project. And then
yeah.
everything else is kind of a bonus from there.
Yeah, and I did have this random thought when thinking about like the landscape and stuff. Oh, Skyrim. Hey, man, if you like Skyrim, watch this. But for some reason, Road Warrior came into my brain. I recently rewatched that, and I'm not saying they're similar, but it's one man,
Yeah.
who's in a post-apocalyptic desert, who yeah, I guess Road Warrior. If you like that kind of maybe if you like that kind of aesthetic,
Yeah.
definitely, like, I would suggest Conan. But then the last thing I want to say is, if you're an Arnold fan and I started by explaining my journey with this, and my journey with this was like I haven't seen these '80s movies that Arnold was in. I haven't seen Raw Deal. I haven't seen Running Man. I haven't seen Commando. He he was born and destined and fated to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think you owe it to yourself if you like the True Lies and you like the Terminators and Terminator 2s and so on and so forth. You owe yourself to throw this on.
I think so too, because in a lot of the other movies where he's more famous, right? Like
Yeah,
Terminator, like True Lies, that stuff. Those are movies that also support him with a lot of things. Whereas if
yeah,
you go back and you're watching Conan and you're watching maybe Raw Deal, Commando, some of the older stuff, Running Man, like there's less support and he carries more of the film just on the strength of his charisma. Where it's like
yeah,
his charisma and his personality are bonuses to movies that would be good even if he wasn't in them, I would say. Like True Lies, that's a James Cameron big mega production. If you put another action star in the lead, the movie still succeeds, I think. It doesn't
right.
become
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
Arnold
yeah.
movie that it is, but I think it still succeeds. I think similar maybe to Terminator, but with Terminator, you get a guy who for at least the runtime of the movie, I'm like I stop asking myself why does the robot have an Austrian accent? I'm like he
Yeah.
plays the machine pretty damn well.
Yes, yeah, and that I was gonna make that point too because you bring up his accent. Like, look at what he overcame.
Yeah.
He overcame that accent, like, and he never, by just sticking with his accent, he never apologized for it. He never tried to do something different, like hide it or like try and do like an American accent. And he still is considered a great actor, you know. So yeah, he's an incredible figure in movie history.
For sure. I mean, you cannot write the story of cinematic history without a chapter on Arnold Schwarzenegger. You cannot
No,
do it.
no, yeah.
And
So
that speaks massive volumes. Like
yes,
for a guy who maybe gets dismissed as like just the action star, just the kind of like commando B movie type of guy, like to think that if you're going to write a story about all cinema from the beginning of time, you most likely have to have a chapter on this guy that came from another country, didn't speak the language, was dubbed out in his first movie, was in the background of some other movies, and just like kept working until the point where he was the biggest draw in the industry for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah,
That's a crazy story.
yeah. And I mean, you know, he Terminator 2, without any caveats, is considered one of the greatest films ever made. You know,
Yeah.
like he's the star. So yeah. So yeah, watch
Well,
Conan. So now I need to watch Conan the Destroyer.
yeah,
So
definitely.
I don't own the super fancy Arrow that has come out, the Arrow edition. I own the $10 Blu-ray, and it's perfectly fine. But I'm not just saying this. I may throw it on tonight.
Yeah. Hey,
'Cause I'm in the
you got the
mindset.
day off, right?
That's right.
You want to see
Well,
more sword and sorcery, like more costumes, more action, more extras, more crazy shit. Wilt Chamberlain walking around 8 feet
and
tall next to Arnold.
and Grace Jones. Grace Jones is in
She's
it.
great in that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I want to end by saying, Nick, thank you. To everyone listening, Nick is awesome. He has a ton of patience. He is going to have an editing job ahead of him. If you enjoy his podcast, he does have a Ko-fi that you can, you know, show your appreciation with. Um, he does this. This isn't his job. It's his passion, I think. I'm speaking for him. And again, like bad movies we love is such a great idea because, and this is movie is a perfect example of giving people an opportunity to talk uh, in an accepting environment about movies they love is a gift. So thank you, Nick, so much for everything you do.
Well, thank you for the kind words and for coming back on the show
Oh,
to
of
talk about
course.
Conan. I'm glad that we were able to work it out. Um, and I think, yeah, this sort of started off all just like, it's kind of like a silly idea, right? Like we're just here to have fun. But the more I've done it, the more I realize that like everybody, for the most part,
Yes.
likes some movie that the majority of people think is bad,
Yeah.
or that the majority of critics at least thought was bad. And so this is just a space to acknowledge that. And I think it's a good way to push back against the sort of like pretentious film bro culture that,
Yeah.
permeates a lot of
Yeah.
film fandom right now. So this is just a way to like have fun, still express love for movies that we actually really love for whatever the reason is. And the more I get to do it, the more fun I have with it. It is a passion project. And I thank you for your support and for coming on the show and for donating to the subscription page.
Yeah, of course. No, it was like a no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely. I've listened to at this point. I think I've listened to at least half of your episodes, and there's a lot. Like and I don't plan on stopping. So I mean, it's been a joy to revisit some of these movies or see these movies for the first time. And do all of them hit for me? No, but like, hey, you need to experience everything in life, the good and the bad. It helps define who you are, helps understand other people. So yeah, no, I love your podcast. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. And
You're welcome. Yeah.
I'm glad that you've been a part of it.
Oh yeah.
So, please come back and do Raw Deal for Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, that would be maybe. That is a
keep
funny
it
movie.
in mind. Let me get through Jean-Claude Van Damme first and see how that goes, because I gotta make sure I get those ducks in a row, because I look like I'm scheduled out through the end of May, and then I need to hit the ground running with Jean-Claude. But honestly, as much as I love Jean-Claude, he's got way more bad movies that I love than Schwarzenegger does. He never got to make a Terminator 2. Like, best he did was he was the motion cap guy in Predator, and then we got his early stuff like Kickboxer, Lionheart, Bloodsport. But like, yeah, they never were like, hey, let's make a $200 million movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme as the lead. That just never happened.
Yeah, I feel like Time Cop is the closest that he got.
Yeah, Time Cop and Street Fighter were like,
right.
If you botch this, we're not going any further.
So I'm not going to be submitting a movie for that, because I just don't have enough of a passion for any of his movies. But I'm actually looking forward to it because, look, man, they're going to be fun movies. Like, they're going to be entertaining. Like, and sometimes that's all you need sometimes. It's just something to throw on for like an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. So no, I think I'm looking forward to that.
Well, spoiler alert, I'm going to submit Double Team, which is him and Dennis Rodman.
That's right. No, I remember that. Look, man, I am down for that. Whatever.
You want to talk about bad movies we love? I mean, that movie is insane. It makes no sense whatsoever, but it was like, Rodman's popular right now. Let's just throw him in there with JCVD and see what happens.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Exactly.
Yeah. All right, well.
Cool. Well, thank you, brother.
Of course, no problem. Thank you so much, Nick.
I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day off. And if you watch Conan the Destroyer, you let me know.
I will.
Cool. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to Sean for coming on the show and for being a good sport. We had to stick it out through a couple days because of some technical issues with the internet. But we persisted just like Conan and made it to the end of our adventure. If you had fun listening to us talk and you want to get in touch with Sean, you can do so at Tyler_Burnham on X/Twitter. I'll make sure I go ahead and put that in the show notes for you. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode. I know you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you do, please consider leaving a rating on your podcast platform of choice and telling a friend about it. And the support page is now live over at ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/badmovieswelove. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have a bad movie you love or would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact me at badmovieswelove@theshice.com or at badmovieswelove on Twitter and Instagram. And that's love with an LUV on the socials. And until next time, take care, be well, and have fun however you get your movies.